Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Cinematic Trinity, where we talk movies, games and TV shows. Now, just me and Tulip this week because we really struggled to find something to talk about this week. Basically, we're kind of in between film releases we wanted to talk about. There's no TV shows out at the moment we're watching, and there's no video games out that we're playing. So just me and Tulip, no Kieran this week, because we are going back in time to 2019, I think. And we are talking about one of our favourite miniseries, and that is HBO's Chernobyl. So let's get into it. So yeah, I mean, this show, it's literally one of our favourites, one of the best series of television in my opinion. So it's one that we thought, in the lieu of no new things to talk about, we would just come and gush about this show.
Yeah, pretty much. And it's also been, 5 years since it was released, because it was released in May 2019. And I feel like when this show was released and we started watching it, well, not me and you, but I watched it. We weren't living together at that point, so I was watching it with my mum and dad, and you were just watching it, by yourself.
Yeah.
So I remember it being so exciting, and it's probably the last time that I've been really excited for something, excited to watch it week on week.
Yeah, I get you.
And it also being consistent and actually good. There's been so many things that have been disappointing or a bit meh, or where I've been like, I'm not really bothered if I don't watch it this week, whatever. I remember, I mean, it's only 5 episodes, so it's not a massive ask.
But to be fair, we rewatched it recently, that's why we're talking about it now, but we were kind of thinking about each episode as they came, it's like, this episode's coming up, this episode's coming up, and you're like, there's not really a dud episode.
No,
they're all so good. There's not because sometimes you get in a series where you're like, you can skip episode 8 or you can skip episode 5 or whatever because it's a bit boring. Whereas these, it's every episode just has its own set piece. It has its own different emotions it gets out of you.
Yeah,
it's just brilliant. We'll get into sort of why, but it literally is one of the best mini-series out there. I literally cannot recommend it enough. It's for me a 10 out of 10
absolutely
TV show.
Absolutely, yeah. I think it's perfect.
Yeah.
But why do you think it is so good? What is it about it that is so good? Is it the fact that there's no dud episodes? But I feel like there's a lot of things where there's dud episodes, but you still consider the series as a whole to be good.
I mean, I think it's one of those things, because this is based on a true story. It's based on the Chernobyl nuclear disaster back in 1986. So I think it's just the true story element, really. It's just so... Because they really did the homework, and it's, on the whole, quite accurate to what happened. So just because of the bizarre things that happen, or, the really serious bits that happen, it just keeps you interested. You're like, I can't believe this happened in real life. And, you watch some historical things, and this is one of them where you're like, I wish I learned about that in school, because it's so interesting, because it's just, obviously the show follows the cleanup effort after Chernobyl. How did it happen, who's responsible for the accident? So it's basically the characters trying to uncover what happened at Chernobyl, and it's just all the how they try and get rid of the radiation, all the stuff they do, the liquidation stuff. It's all very interesting.
Very interesting, yeah. I just think that I always say that you can just never get anything that's crazier than a true story. It was God, what was it that we watched recently?
Baby Reindeer.
Oh, was it that? I mean, I feel like I've said it a few times, but
Baby Reindeer and Hacksaw Ridge, I think, were the two we've watched where they're both based on true stories, and you're like, wow, I can't believe that.
Yeah, no, happened. I think that there was
another true story.
No, I think what I'm thinking of, because I watch a lot of documentaries on my own, I watched the documentary, I can't remember what it was called, it was on Netflix, about the kids in America who went to the school that was an abusive, basically just an abusive school where all the teachers were basically abusing the kids. And that was something where I thought, even though it wasn't a series, a dramatized series, it was just a documentary, you just thought you can't make something up that is as interesting, scary, awful as a true story. Nothing gets worse than the truth.
Yeah, no, exactly.
And I think that this show as well is a good representation of that. And do you remember at the time they released this, and then there was also another series that came out, which was it like the obviously this one that Craig Mazin did was, you know, accurate, whatever. And then another series came out shortly after that was apparently just like, you know,
Is that
Russia approved or
Yeah.
like their kind of story.
Yeah, I
We
think
never
that-
watched it, did
No,
we?
I know they were doing it like. I don't think he was in response. It might just one of those coincidental. You're making a show about Chernobyl. We're making a show about Chernobyl. But yeah, it's like
the two sides of it.
I think from like memory as well, because like the Russian one was very much like, oh, maybe the Americans did it. Maybe it was like sabotage or something like that at the reactor rather than obviously what the show entails and like what actually happened at
Yeah.
but yeah, no, that was weird. I remember that because it was kind of like, okay, Russia, like, you know, you do you. I'm sure like, because, you know, that some bits can be contested.
Are we making that up or did
No,
is that what
that
really
definitely
happened?
did. Yeah, there was definitely one where like Russia did another Chernobyl like series
Yeah.
from like their
It was
perspective.
on Netflix, wasn't it?
I've no idea. I'll have to like Google that in the meantime. But,
Yeah, let's Google that and
but yeah,
just
I think
fact
like
check.
I think first of all, like the story like is just brilliant, and like the way it's told, like there's a good sequence to the events and stuff, and it like has a doesn't like look. I guess like a satisfying conclusion is what you'd call it, like a good wrap up on everything.
Yeah, I think the way that the story is adapted to keep it as close to the truth as possible, but also, you know, a dramatized telling of it, I think that it works so well.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I think that it all really works, and the fact that they created the character of what's she called? Homyuk. Ulana Homyuk.
Yep.
Like, her character was like purely created to basically represent all the scientists that worked on it, basically, and she was just a representation of that. And I think that was such a good choice. It could have been a poor choice if it was poorly done, but because it was so well done and she was such a great character and such a formidable character, it really like worked to represent all those people in a good way. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think when I first watched it, I was like, God, she's like ridiculously good at her job, like finding all these bits out, like just her. But then you realise it's like, oh wait, no, this is like the combined efforts of all these scientists. Like they would have gone and probably like interviewed people who were in the accident.
Yeah.
They would have gone out and like looked at all these records, and they would have helped like Lagazov.
Exactly.
in
And they
his
don't shy
investigation.
away from any of the sort of the liberties that they took in the truth to tell the story.
Yeah.
Like they're so, you know, because it literally says at the end, she was created as a reputation, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
So I think that the fact that there's so much talk around the series at the same time that the series is being shown to tell the story on like a whole other, it's like, watch the show's really good, but let's also talk about what actually happened. And I think that's really interesting again, and what sort of like heightened it.
I think another thing that works as well is just the performances. Like everyone across the board is
everybody's
really good.
just brilliant in this, and I just love Jared Harris
Yeah, he's
so
good.
much. I don't know what it is about
Yeah.
him that he's just so
Whenever
fantastic.
he's in something,
he's
it
brilliant.
boosts the quality, and like, oh, Jared Harris is in this.
Yeah.
Not that like
what was
I've
he recently?
I don't know what he would have been in. He's been in like, he keeps popping up in stuff I think we've watched. Like obviously he was in Robert
Sherlock.
Downey, Sherlock Holmes,
Not Sherlock Holmes.
No, he was in that. He was in The Terror as well. That was really good.
Oh my
he was really
god!
good in that.
Yeah, we should talk about that because I kind of want to watch that again.
Yeah,
because
that was
that's
good.
another true story.
Kind of,
True.
again, like the
Obviously,
initial,
it's not really true, but
yeah, the killer polar bear ghost thing in that show. But yeah, that is like, because we watched a documentary on like the actual HMS Terror. That's a story for another time. But yeah, that's another good. Factually, stuff they do is very good and like interesting. But then there's supernatural stuff which you're a bit like, eh.
yeah.
Could
Did
go with
History
that.
Buffs ever do one on Chernobyl? Because that's the one we watched
No.
for The Terror, isn't it?
Yeah,
I'd love
yeah.
to see a video
Shout
of his
out
on
to
Chernobyl.
Nick Hodges from History Buffs.
Yeah, I just think
Gonna
his
move
videos
on.
are great.
Gonna
yeah.
move on and do Chernobyl.
Isn't he doing one at the moment? Didn't he post to say that he's not
I've no
about
idea.
Chernobyl, but
I have no idea. But yeah, he doesn't do it like
Off
every
topic.
week, but when he does do one, go watch him, History Buffs. So he critiques.
very interesting.
Yeah, he'll do like historical movies and like how accurate they are, and some of them, like the more like abysmal ones, are like just interesting hearing what they got wrong or how much they got right, kind of thing. So yeah, go.
Particularly, Mel Gibson films.
Yes, Mel
Right.
Gibson films he does not like.
Yeah,
but yeah, go.
He did Napoleon, didn't he?
He's making one
Is
on
that what he said
Napoleon,
he
I
was
think,
making?
maybe. Yeah.
Anyway,
Stay tuned. We'll have to
off
see.
topic.
Yeah, but no, Jared Harris is good. Stellan Skarsgård is good.
He's fantastic in
Yeah,
it. You did
yeah.
a good impression of him. Do you think you could do it again?
Oh,
Do you think
God.
you could do it on cue?
It is hard.
Try and think of something he says.
Yeah. Well, that's where you got wrong.
They say they gave him the propaganda number. You know, when he talks about the propaganda.
Oh no, I can't do that. All I know is I may not know much about nuclear reactors, but I know a lot about concrete. That's what,
I think that's a great impression.
come on, guys, if you need to come to the Central Committee, you know, he kind of just has that that kind of raspy voice. But no, he's brilliant in this, and like all the Paul Ritter as well, like as Dyatlov, and like the.
Oh, I know, what a shame.
I know, what a
we
shame.
do love Paul Ritter, don't we?
Yeah, he was brilliant, and like just all the side characters, like all the people in the plant, are like memorable, and they performed well. Like the director Brakhanov and like Famine, they were portrayed.
You love his voice, don't you?
Yeah,
Director
he's like
Brakhanov,
the.
that another raspy.
Well, he played for anyone listening who's played Elden Ring. He plays Moog, the Lord of Blood, and like, yeah, he's the one who's like really Dyatlov and. Why is my reactor on fire, Dyatlov? You know, that's like really bad impression of his voice, but like that's how he talks. Because I know he was in the Batman, and he was like, "Do you have any idea what you've done, Batman?" Kind of like thing.
Oh, the Batman. Yeah, he was.
Yeah,
in
the
the
Batman. Yeah, he was like the
wasn't
commissioner
he?
guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's like everyone just across the board. Like they do the right mix of like there's some like comedic bits, but they do just treat the whole thing very seriously.
Yeah, but it's not like boring
No.
or dull or anything.
No.
Like it keeps you engaged through like the script. I think the script is brilliant.
Yeah.
And our favourite person that we've not our favourite person, the person that we've not mentioned who's big now, Barry Keoghan.
Oh, yeah,
is
he is,
also in it in a bit part essentially.
Yeah.
Well, not a bit part, you know. There's lots of bit parts in this,
Yeah.
you know, there's just lots of people. It's like Oppenheimer at the end when it's
Well, he's like,
oh, it's
yeah.
Gary Oldman, and it's this person. I can't remember anybody else who was in it, but it's like, here's just all
Rami
these people.
Malek.
Yeah, let's just throw them all in.
Yeah,
for
he's like Barry Keoghan's like one of the liquidators, like, and he has like a whole episode where he gets his own set pieces. But yeah, I think just like episode by episode, it is just every episode has its own bit, which is really interesting. So the first one is basically the immediate aftermath of the explosions, like inside the factory. Like Jared Harris isn't in it until the very end.
Yeah,
it's just kind of like, you know, all the staff at the reactor trying to like figure out what's going on, and like obviously Dyatlov's like in denial what happened. It's the whole like Soviet Union like scheming, like them trying to sweep it under the rug still and be like, oh, it wasn't like an explosion, the core didn't explode, it was a water tank. 3.6 Rontgen per hour.
It's not great, but it's not horrifying.
Yeah. That's for anyone watching, like there's a good YouTube video. Obviously the steamed.
I was going to mention later about like our favourite meme format and like I will just let's talk about it now.
Yeah.
I'll never forget being out with your family for dinner. I think it might have even been your granddad's birthday or something, or somebody's birthday.
Yeah.
And we were sat around the table. Oh, was it your dad's birthday? Because it was your dad's is in June. Anyway, we were sat around the table, and it was basically, as we do, it's just me and you chatting for the whole evening. And then did somebody send it to you?
So it was either that, or I was just like scrolling through
or
YouTube
you scrolled
and it came up. Yeah.
And it was the famous steamed hams meme format, but with the Chernobyl clips like put into it.
Yeah.
Oh god, it's just the funniest thing. Obviously we can't do it any justice by describing it, but it is so funny, and we still like quote it all. Well, I feel like we still quote it all the time.
Yeah, we still
we?
just get the
reactor Dyatlov and steamed core. Just the editing is just so brilliant. Anyway, it cracks us
Go
up.
watch the steamed hams Chernobyl mashup. It is
if you type that into
really,
YouTube,
really funny.
That's probably the best thing to come out of the series is just that meme. I just think it's hilarious.
Well, Dyatlov. I found you despite your directions. Director Brakhanov. Welcome. What a brilliant one. But yeah.
No, I think the funniest bit is when he was like, I'm just ensuring a steady flow of water through the core.
Or just like, what the hell is going on in there? And it's just like, the Cherenkov effect.
Do you taste metal?
yeah. Go watch it. That's the moral of that story.
Let's not keep quoting it. Yeah.
So episode 1 is that. Episode 2 is basically Jared Harris gets brought on board. Him and Stellan Skarsgård's character Shabina go to Chernobyl to obviously figure out what's going on, and it's the whole like this is a much bigger thing than we anticipated.
Nobody believes it's still at that point, do they? Until they.
I like the like the sort of layman stuff they do to like explain how a nuclear reactor works, because you get that good scene where Stellan Skarsgård's like, tell me how a nuclear reactor works, and he gets like a piece of paper and he describes about like neutrons and stuff, and how every bit of radiation is like a bullet, and that's like, you know, to sort of quantify the danger, and it's like all these bullets and the whole like, oh, it's like that's double the bomb at Hiroshima, and that's dropping hour after hour, and you know, 40 bombs worth by now. Like, you get quotes like that,
and he looks at his watch, doesn't he?
Like, you get stuff like that. And then episode 3 is the hospital, which again, like that, I remember watching that for the first time as well.
It's just, I mean, it's awful, but it's just fantastic. The way that it's done, and the makeup, the body makeup, because obviously it's all the radiation and stuff like that. Like, I'll never forget watching it. Like, I feel like it's one of those moments where I just remember every second of watching it. Like, it was just so brilliant.
It is horrifying, because that's basically where, like, I guess the main plot is the hospital, because it's basically like the firefighters from the first episode get moved to Moscow, so it's like, how does the radiation affect them after the fact? And it's just like body horror, and it's like, you know, the makeup and stuff like that looks amazing.
Fantastic,
like
isn't
the
it?
Topton-off guy, when she's like interviewing him, and it's like the weird, like his lips are kind of gone, so you just see like his teeth, and it's just like his eyes like being bloodshot and stuff like that, and it's just this really
it's horrendous.
And then like the because of it, the Ikatenko woman, like her husband was a firefighter, she goes there like to go see him. She's very like annoying.
We find her very annoying, don't we? That's probably the only downs. I'm sure she's like no disrespect to the actual woman, because I feel like I would have done exactly
and she's been
the
in
same
stuff
thing.
like afterwards. And she's been really good,
I mean, like the woman in real life, I don't mean the actress. I mean the woman in real life. Like, no disrespect, because that's what her choice was to, you know, go and see her husband and touch him and hug him and look after him, and she was pregnant at the time. But we watch it and we're just like, oh god, she's so annoying.
Yeah, we'll literally be like, oh, so don't hug your husband. Instantly goes and hugs him. Oh, stay on this side of the plastic.
Instantly goes like the
so again, that's like dramatization probably, you know, but it's...
it's not, because I was just watching, funnily enough, I just watched a documentary about it, because that's what I do. Yeah. And she was talking about it, and she was saying that they said, like, don't go and don't hug him, don't touch him, don't know anything. And that was like the first thing she did. But I suppose that's just the power
I guess if you know, because you can't see like radiation, you don't, like, they probably didn't have a real understanding, like, as a normal person,
especially initially, because it wasn't like a day later he was covered in all these burns. Like, he looked fine,
he was red-faced and stuff, but he was like walking around.
Yeah, exactly. He seemed like he would recover from it, not that he would be eaten alive from the inside, essentially. So I think it is harder to know. And then once she'd probably touched him for that first time, or hugged him for that first time, it was probably already too late anyway. You know, but anyway, she was a bit annoying in this.
Yeah, but like, you get stuff with him, so like, you know, he looks fine, then he like starts to swell, and then like later on in the episode he like turns, like his skin goes black and grey, and it's like him lying on the bed, and like, you know, he's dying basically, and then he's dead by the end of the episode, and they like bury him in a steel coffin, like, or must be like a lead coffin, and they dump like concrete over it and bury them in concrete. Like, that's so...
It's such a cool shot of that. Like, all like the cinematography and stuff like that is just...
It adds to like the heavy hitting nature of the show, I think.
And then soundtrack and everything. Like, it all goes together to just create this like masterpiece.
Yeah. Episode 4 goes into... That's probably the more like depressing episode, especially for like an animal lover.
We did fast forward the bits,
because that's where Barry Keoghan's like liquidation team is animal control, so they need to go around and basically kill all the animals, because they've got radiation, so like, they have to be disposed of, and they have to bury the bodies. And it's just, you know, him coming to terms with like killing dogs and
it's stuff. Just not very nice to watch. Again, it's very well done. Blah 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 blah. But I can't watch it. Dogs are dying.
Yeah, it's interesting from that perspective as well. Like, that's the lengths you have to go through to contain a nuclear accident. It is just everything.
Well, when
is
you think, like, God, if that happened now and somebody sent you off to shoot a load of dogs, or if we had to evacuate and we had to, like I literally said the other day, didn't I, that I had a nightmare quite recently about having to evacuate and having to leave the dog and looking at her on the driveway, and she was just sitting and looking at me, and it's just too awful to even think about. But that is what happens, you know, in times of disasters, human made or otherwise. So it's scary to think about.
So you get like that side of things, and then the Gazov Shabina side is them trying to clear the graphite off of the roof to then build a containment unit around the building.
Yeah.
Which, and again, that's like another good segment because it's the whole
That's
like
fantastic.
one shot thing where it's the guy trying to get the graphite off the roof and he's got 90 seconds and it's just the tension. He keeps falling over.
Yeah.
And like that whole segment's cool, and it's just like you get the bits at the end as well where like they do it and all the soldiers are being like congratulated and they're all like, I served the Soviet Union, thank you. I served the Soviet Union, thank you. And you're like, oh god, all these like men who like cut their lifespan like in half to like save the save the world, but like, you know, save a good portion of like humanity from like this disaster.
And I just think like the disaster side of it is bad enough as it is, and what they're going through is bad enough, but there's that undertone of it all being very secretive and state in the Soviet Union. Like, I feel like that is scarier than the actual like disaster to me. Like, it really gives me the chills to think about like,
I mean, you think of
that
like
kind of thing.
You think if like the government kept something that big from like the public, you know, because it's only like the world finds out about Chernobyl because they can detect radiation and be like, yeah, something's happened in Russia.
Something as so bad has happened, we can detect it.
Which like basically forced Russia's hand to be like, yeah, no, we had a nuclear explosion happen. But like, yeah, the fact that they tried to keep that under wraps and like just the lengths they go to, like spying on people, you know, keeping people quiet, making them disappear, stuff like that, or just like. Because there's the bit as well, like with the graphite, they need to use like a robot, like initially, so they try and commission like a police like robot to be there to like push the graphite off the most dangerous bit of roof, but they only tell the Germans who made the robot like the radiation is X high when it's actually like 10 times higher than that.
Did that actually happen? I don't.
It could. I mean, I imagine.
I don't know, because when I was watching the documentary thing, like they did say about the German robot, and they did say that it like wasn't working properly, like the circuits kept getting fried and stuff like that. So I suppose it must have been like, you know,
well, it's going to be, it was either really ill-equipped anyway, or Russia was like, yeah, no, it's not that bad, it only needs to be this specification, and they're like, well, no, that was never going to work.
Yeah, exactly.
But
anyway, it's interesting in the show. Anyway. Yeah.
And then the final episode is it's basically just a courtroom drama, but like even though it's them talking, I still find it really interesting. Like, me and you always come back to how does an RBMK reactor, and we try and remember like all the components as to what boosts reactivity and then lowers reactivity, and
we'll never remember it.
Yeah.
Can you remember it now?
We
watched it an hour ago.
We literally watched it an hour ago, but it's all the different.
So you've got the uranium-235 and then the boron, which creates heat. No, that creates steam, which creates the
Okay, so you got uranium-235, which is reactive. You got boron control rods, which reduce reactivity. Part of it is they pump water through the core to also reduce reactivity, but that generates steam because of the heat. Steam creates heat. There's the negative void or positive void coefficient, which means the hotter something gets, the less reactive it gets. So it's this constant like cycle. But then like obviously when it's the Chernobyl disaster, things like xenon poisoning got involved, which then lowers reactivity. So then they try and remove the water, they remove the control rods, and then that basically burns the xenon away, and then reactivity and then just
nothing
skyrockets,
is keeping it in check, isn't it? And then the graphite hits it, and that's when it explodes. So
and that is how an RBMK reactor.
Well done, Michael.
I want that to be. That should be a party trick. I have to bring like get the cue cards he has with the board and be like, this is how it happens.
I just feel like my favourite thing about all of that is when he's got the cue cards out, like all the cue cards are in Russian. Like everybody else is speaking English. There's no accents. There's no fake Russian accents. Everybody's just talking normally. And then you've just got these Russian cue cards. And I just think it's like, I love that. I was going to
ask you that. Like, do you think like it being in like obviously them English speaking, because it's like no one tries like a Russian accent like at all. Do you think that like if it was all like a Russian dubbed thing, would that have like hampered your enjoyment, or would you think, I kind of wish it was Russian, so then it could have been like a Parasite, you know, like obviously watching it in that language?
Yeah. I think as long as, you know, the essential script behind it and the performances behind it were exactly the same, then I don't think it would have dampened it. But I think if there was like a badly done Russian accent, then that would have like hampered my enjoyment of it.
Yeah,
I think it
yeah.
was. I find it quite refreshing. It's just like, look, we're not even going to bother.
It's like,
because it
yeah.
never works. It's not like we're trying to do like imitations of,
Yeah.
you know, whatever. Like,
And
I
I'm
think
like,
it's,
oh, the Russian power plant, it blew up, and, you know,
Yeah.
I am Russian, you know, not
Yeah.
doing that. But, like, yeah, I get what you mean. And obviously, they probably would have had to have a different cast, which could have led to, like, its own kind of issues. Like, we're not going to force Jared Harris to, you know, you need to learn Russian now. You need to speak in Russian.
Yeah.
But it is kind of weird, like, hearing all these English and, like, American people refer to other countries, because I'm like, oh, the Americans use this. It's like, well, you're basically American, like, you know, this is kind
Yeah.
of weird. But no, I think
it
it
works.
yeah, I think it works well enough, doesn't
yeah,
it? You know,
I think it's good. No,
Yeah.
I prefer it that way. I wouldn't
Yeah.
have liked it any other way.
yeah. But yeah, there's literally the sort of courtroom drama that ends, and then it's the sort of obligatory fade to black, and here's what actually
My
happened.
favourite part. That is my favourite part of any true story, drama thing, whatever. I don't
Yeah.
know why I love it so much. It's just nice to just get those few hints of like what really happened. I just think it's like, I think it's respectful as well. I think
Oh, yeah.
I'm disappointed if there's like a true story thing and there's not some text at the end which says, oh, this is what really happened.
Yeah, I
I
get
think
you.
it's respectful to, you know, acknowledge what actually happened, you know,
Yeah.
and the fact that this is a dramatized retelling and blah 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 blah, whatever.
Yeah,
I think that's the most interesting part of it.
yeah. I think
So,
just
yeah.
literally one of the best like TV shows.
It
out
is.
there.
Nothing's been as good as since that.
Yeah.
Nothing I've watched has been as good.
There's not been like an event like it has there, like a mini series like that where you watch and you're like, oh my god, that was brilliant. Like
Yeah.
we can rewatch that like quite a lot. I feel like
Yeah.
before that you had like, because I know we always come back to like OJ Simpson, The People versus OJ.
Yeah.
Like we can rewatch
But
that.
again, we rewatch it because we've got a soft spot for it.
Yeah.
But I don't think it's like actually a 10. I think I consider it a 10 out of 10 because I've got a soft spot for it and I like it. I don't care what
Yeah,
anybody
yeah.
else says. But this is a genuine 10 out
Yeah,
of
yeah,
10.
yeah,
Like
yeah.
genuine article, you know.
Yeah.
It's not got any nostalgia involved or I
Yeah.
just like it because I like it. Like there's reasons behind it and that's why it's so good.
Did you think back to the Last of Us TV show watching?
Yeah, it did make me it made me feel disappointed
Right.
because I loved this so much and it meant that I was really looking forward to The Last of Us, you know, even just like the makeup that they would do. I know that he used the same people who did the body horror stuff for this as he
The
did in The
radiation
Last
stuff,
of Us.
yeah.
And I was just so disappointed by that show. And I just think, what a shame. Like, he made something so brilliant. And not to say that it isn't good, but it's just not as good. I don't know whether he maybe had more to answer to or more people to answer to, more people involved that can sort of dampen it, you know, or there's nothing to keep it as grounded in reality as obviously a true story. It has to be grounded in reality at all times, whereas, you know, The Last of Us didn't. I just didn't. I'm never gonna. I don't think I'll ever watch it again. And when series 2 is coming around, I'm not like, oh my god, I can't wait for The Last of Us series 2. I love the first one so much. I'm just like, do you know what? I don't care, because the best episode with that was that episode 3 of that whole story.
Yeah.
With whatever his name is.
Bill.
Yeah, and that was probably because that was all like his doing.
I was
imagine.
what my thoughts were is like, it's really interesting, like if they almost did like in The Last of Us world, but like a Chernobyl-esque thing, like, oh, this virus is broken out, how are we going to contain this virus? It's basically Chernobyl.
Yeah, that's what we said.
but
I
not-
would have rather have seen The Last of Us
'Cause you
like
get, like-
Elseworlds, you know, like
because you get like
story.
because you get the opening of the Last of Us TV show where it's like the news report or like the talk show, and he talks about the virus. That's really cool. The second episode is when that like it's in Asia and it's that woman goes to the hospital and they like take the mushroom out of the guy's mouth, and that's very Chernobyl-esque. Like, oh, look at this body horror, look what's happening to these people. Like, you know, it's that element. I was like, this feels like Chernobyl in The Last of Us kind of thing.
Yeah.
And they have like the conversation, and she's like, what are we going to do? Oh, we need to bomb the city. So it's like, oh, they're having like these political discussions just like in Chernobyl. But then it's like, we need to take it back because this is based on a pre-existing game story.
So let's go back and do that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know.
There's like the world building bits feel very like Craig Mazin, like in that Chernobyl-esque kind of thing, but then it needs to come back to the
what's
story.
already there.
Yeah.
I'd like to see him do something that's completely of his own merit, that's either something else based on a true story or a dramatisation of something else, but that's fresh and new and that I've not seen before, because that's probably where he excels in his writing and his production and stuff like that. That's probably his strengths rather than...
I'm interested to see what he does with series 2, like if he does do more like world building stuff and like focuses a little bit more away from the games, like if he does more backstory for some of the factions and stuff in the game. I know I mentioned this already when we did the Last of Us 2 review, but like it's, what will be. Season 2 will come out. We will review it for your viewing pleasure. But yeah, I think...
But for now...
For now.
This continues to be...
Yeah, for now, go watch Chernobyl on HBO.
If you've not seen it.
Go watch it on HBO, Sky, whichever. But yeah, go watch it because it is just utterly brilliant. And I'm glad that we have done an episode to just talk about it.
Yeah, it's good to commemorate this and put our opinions to film. So in 20 years' time, we can look back and say, oh, yeah, do you remember when we...
and we still
did
like
that?
it now.
Still,
yeah. And it's still the best miniseries ever made 20 years later.
Yeah.
Oh, but thank you so much for listening to this podcast, guys. Next week, we are talking about Furiosa, a Mad Max story, which I know Tulip's very excited for.
Yeah, by the way, that is sarcasm. I'm not excited for it.
We won't get into it.
Yeah, let's not talk about it now. I'll be here all day.
But we'll be back as the full Trinity. But in the meantime, thank you so much for listening. I've been Michael.
And I've been Tulip.